Mike, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm John Michael Robbins. Most people around Westminster know me as Mike because I was a childhood nickname. I wasn't born in Carroll County, but I've lived about 66 years of my life in the Carroll County environs. And I think it's a beautiful county and a lot of nice people in this area.
Okay. You live mostly in Westminster?
My family lived on either side of Westminster. My dad was a watchmaker and a jeweler, had his own business for a while in the early 60s in Westminster. And our family lived out on the old Manchester Road for about 5 years, and then they built another house south of Westminster. So yeah, around the Westminster area most of my life. And I even currently live up in the Silver Run area.
What did you do when you were growing up? What type of work were you involved in?
Well, being a rural county, we, as a youth, our summers were spent on the neighboring farm, with the old farmer there who really farmed with a team of horses and mules, and which was kind of unique because that was on the way out back then. And used to play in the hay mow and ride the old team when he was out in the field, and it was just cool growing up.
Did you ever hear about this guy up in Frederick that has a mule team and he does clearing of the woods?
I've seen and heard of him, but I have never met him. That's bringing back the old way of doing things. Yeah. But just playing in the woods and out in the fields and all that fresh air. I mean, that's a great way to grow up.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this: as far as Carroll County, what do you like best of Carroll County? Being up here in Carroll County in the rural environment.
I guess I like the people. For the most part. Everybody's friendly, open, willing to help you if you're in need, and through my various associations with other community organizations, I've met a tremendous number of terrific people, and we're extremely lucky in Carroll County to have, that kind of a sense of community.
You don't have as many farmers around. Like when you were growing up, I'm sure there was a lot more farms in Carroll County.
Oh, yeah.
The development, you don't see as much. Can you expound on that as far as changes?
It sort of goes into my profession later on. I grew up, went to Westminster schools, graduated from Westminster High School, then went away to college up in Pennsylvania, and when I came back, I was looking for a job, and I ended up with the Carroll County Health Department. And some of the things that I got involved with was inspecting homes, particularly the water wells, their wastewater systems, and doing the percolation tests that led to all this development in the county. And so I saw a lot of excellent farmland that, instead of sprouting corn and wheat, was sprouting houses. And, I guess I was a part of that transition, more to the bedroom community as opposed to the agricultural community.
Tell us a little bit about one of the problems that we have up here in Carroll County, like you said, with development, as far as the water supply.
Water supply, generally the water supply in Carroll County is excellent. The state of the art in drilling wells and protecting water supplies has come a tremendous way from the time you had protected springs to the hand-dug wells, all of which, the drilled well now replaces. So in that aspect, the health of the community and property owner is much better than back when. Even though I'm sure there's people that thrive on their spring water wherever they can get it, and it's just sort of is very interesting to me to see people buying bottled water when we have so much of it, that you can get right out of a tap that's just as clean and pure.
I haven't seen any spring wells. Like I know I live up in Manchester, Mike, and there's one up in Glen Rock there. I don't know if you're familiar with that well up there. It's a spring well, and they provide free water. You go and you take it out from a shallow well.
We used to have one out towards Medford that was a free running spring, and tremendous number of people got their water there, but you never know what's going to. Whenever you have water that's not protected, and I mean protected from rain runoff, you're going to have fluctuation in bacterial contamination and other things. So it may taste good, but it's a very questionable whether it's always going to be good. And
how about percolation test? You want to talk a little bit about that with your background and why some properties perk and others don't?
That's generally because of the nature of the soils. And some places in Carroll County, the soil is very high clay content. And as a result, the water doesn't seep out. And then, the reason for the percolation test is a tool that the health department used to determine the suitability of a property for sustaining an on-site septic system. And if you don't have good percolation, more than likely you're going to end up having problems down the road. Yeah. So I always said, particularly up in the red clay area, which extends from Union Bridge through Tawnytown area, that's where we used to have a lot of problems. And fortunately, with new technology, we're able to put in systems that are even more suitable for that area and work out much better as far as drainage, getting it into the soil.
I have a friend of mine up in Manchester, and he had this new type of septic system put in with it eliminates the nitrogen, whatever, from going into the bay.
Right.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, if I think you're referring to some of the aerobic treatment systems that sort of are different from a septic tank in that they bubble air into the wastewater, and the bacteria is more effective in breaking down the components of sewage, and the end product is a cleaner effluent that obviously gets disposed of in the soil. And if it's cleaner coming out of the septic tank, it's obviously going to be cleaner going into the watershed, which is where it eventually will end up.
How's Carroll County doing as far as cleaning up their act, as far as like with the Chesapeake Bay? We doing a lot better than
I think
years
so.
ago?
Yeah. Cleaning up the bay is such a massive undertaking. When you stop and think that everybody has ownership of, polluting it, if you will, or not polluting it, and you think of the major source of the water that goes into the bay is up in Pennsylvania, when 1/3 of the state is the watershed for the Susquehanna River, and all the people that live around that and along the bay waterfront. It's a tremendous problem. So everybody has to buy into the cleanup of it.
Tell me a little bit about your involvement in community organizations. What have you been doing, as far as like your lifetime work? Just started out years ago, then bring it up to the present?
Well, as you can see with the uniform I'm wearing, I'm been deeply involved with the Boy Scouting program. And that all started when, as a Cub Scout and going into Boy Scouting back in the 50s and 60s, had a tremendous amount of fun with boys my age, and we had excellent adult leadership. And as a result of that, I earned the Eagle Scout Award. And I just stayed in the program after I became 18 years of age. And when I came back from college, I became an adult leader, a scoutmaster, and I ended up spending 2 terms as a scoutmaster with one of the local troops in Westminster, Troop 321, that's sponsored by the Church of the Ascension. And they're still in existence, and doing very well too. So that continuity in leadership is it is terrific for, again, in the community. Says a lot about our Carroll County community.
And I see that you're an advisor for the Eagle Scouts.
Yeah, in my career, I've done just about everything. I mentioned Scoutmaster, but I've also worked on a district level, even serving as a district chairman back in the 80s. And then you're like any volunteer organization, they'll find a job for you, and as much as you wanted to put into it. And I worked on a council level, Baltimore area council level, with a program, advanced training program called the Wood Badge, which is what these little wooden things are. It's a training for adults to make them better leaders. And I served on a number of training staffs and eventually became a course director for that program. And then I stepped back just a little bit from the being super active to helping on the district level with Boy Scout that are candidates for the Eagle rank. One of the requirements is they have to do a service project that benefits a community organization. It cannot benefit Boy Scouting directly, nor can it be used for a commercial venture. So the boys present a proposal of what they would like to do to help their community. And I help them write that, review what they are presenting, giving them some tips on how they can, make it better. And it brings together everything that they have learned in scouting up to that point. Scoutcraft skills, to leadership skills, to interacting with other people. All of that is brought to bear in this project. So it's a very important part of their growth in earning the Eagle rank.
Well, I'm a former Boy Scout, and former Cub Scout, and also like you, but I haven't been doing it as long. I was also a leader, a Boy Scout leader over in Germany when I was in the military.
Really? Okay.
And that's one of the great things that I enjoy out of it, because it's fantastic to help other people, especially young boys that are.
And that's one of the
skills,
right. That's really one of the rewards that you get personally out of it, to see young men grow and develop. And I have a number of young men that have come back to me and said, really appreciate you taking your time to be, a scout leader, and then to see them carry it on. I have one young man that now has 2 Eagle Scout sons, and he himself was a Cub leader and a Boy Scout leader. That's, makes the effort all worthwhile.
I remember when I was a Boy Scout, I was 16, and my dad and I, along with our troop up in Pennsylvania, we went up to Bear Lake, and it was in Chippewa, Quebec, Canada. One of the greatest experiences of my life. Could you tell me some of the trips that you've made, over the years that really stand out as far as the great time that you had? And
Yeah, well, I guess similar to your experience, when boys get a little older, they've been through a lot of camping experience and been to camporees and jamborees. They need something a little bit more challenging. So the boys that say are 14 years old and older, we used to take on high adventure trips up to the Adirondack Mountains up in upper state New York. And if you're not familiar with the Adirondacks, it's a reserve that's the size of Connecticut in upper state New York that is totally wilderness. And they've got some very high mountains and some beautiful lakes and rivers. And we used to take them up there mostly for backpacking and climbing the mountains. And part of the reason for that was that we let them become the leaders. Every day we'd have an election of a trail boss, and that was the guy that had to make all the decisions for the group that particular day. And, we gave them that latitude to make the decisions, but, some of this could be life and death situations. So we counseled them and, let them know that we were there. If they got into a situation, let's discuss it and come to a safe conclusion. But for the most part, these kids it's very rigorous and very, very tiring, but they all rose to the challenge, which, gives you a little faith in the youth that they can deal with whatever life hands out.
you're in Carroll County. How many candidates do we have right now for the Eagle Award? You think, off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I guess at any one time we probably have 12, 15, maybe 20. It's, most boys now realize, and this is what I try to point out to the younger scouts, is life deals you certain deadlines. And one of the deadlines that you will face is if you are staying in scouting, when you turn 18, the door shuts when you cannot earn the Eagle Scout. So you have to prepare for that cutoff point. And some of them respond to that challenge, others, they don't. But it is very encouraging to see more and more boys stepping up to the plate and meeting the challenge of the Eagle Scout.
I have a friend of mine up in Manchester, Cullen Phillips. I don't know if you
Sure.
know Cullen. He's been active like yourself for many, many years, and he tells me that basically this is one of the greatest organizations he's ever been involved with, and like yourself, he's probably been involved in it for, I'd say, 30 plus years, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going on my 60th year next year, so yeah, I've been around the horn a little bit with the organization, and like any organization, you have growing pains and you have issues that you have to deal with. But the thing that the core values, the scout oath, scout law, all of those are, guidelines that you can carry on for the rest of your life. And, it's the way I look at it, it's translating the golden rule, if you will, into service to others.
Tell me about your work with the veterans, as far as with the American Legion. I'm a member of Post 200 up in
Over in Hampstead?
Yeah.
I'm affiliated as Sons of American Legion over at our local post in Westminster, or post number 31. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I was approached to help with a summer camp program that they sponsor up in Western Maryland, up above Cunningham Falls State Park. They have a camp called Camp Westmar. And all the posts sponsor kids with that are disadvantaged, that come from broken homes and, not the best life situation, and bring them up to camp for a week of camping. And I was asked to help with, I guess from my scouting program background, to help with developing a program for these kids. And again, just seeing them, respond to it. Most of these kids never had any discipline in their life, so you got to get up, you got to make your bed and clean your cabin, those kind of things. Pay attention when people are talking. All those things, you hope carry on later on for them. But again, it was a very rewarding experience up there.
Tell me about this American Chestnut Foundation. I see you're involved with that as well.
Yeah, are you familiar with the American chestnut? It was one of the premier hardwoods on the East Coast, and back in the 20s and 30s, it developed a blight that was imported from overseas, like a lot of other pests that we have that we're dealing with now. But this blight, if you will, fungus blight, got in, and it devastated the population of American chestnuts. And the whole Appalachian area was, denuded of, these trees grew as big or bigger than the oak trees that we have around here. And it's a beautiful wood. And the American Chestnut Foundation was founded to try to bring back the American chestnut. It's a very tenacious species in that when the tree grows and dies off, the trunk still sends up sprouts. And some of them grow to, somewhat maturity, get maybe 8-10 inches in diameter, but most of them, they develop that fungal growth and cankers, and that kills them. So now the foundation is trying to reestablish, and what they're doing is crossing a Chinese chestnut, which is resistant to this bug, and the true American chestnut. And by crossbreeding them and then selecting the ones that show the characteristics of the true American chestnut, they're backbreeding and, hoping that eventually they're going to have one that's going to be disease resistant, and that we can get, another population in here. And we have orchards of American chestnuts all up and down Appalachia. And most of our high schools have American or chestnut orchards in their backyards that the kids, the school maintains for them, and they take care of them. So, getting that next generation involved is a challenge too. And, because you and I are not going to see the results of this work, because, just think about, a tree takes so many years, 10, 15 years to become mature enough to have seeds. So you multiply that out, it takes a long while to get this reestablished. So I'm very, very glad to be a part of getting that started, and, hopefully it'll bear fruit, no pun intended.
I see, Mike, that you're also in the Appalachian Trail Conservatory. Can you tell us what you do there?
Well, how I got involved with this is a number of years ago. I had started, and again through Scouts, walking the Appalachian Trail, portions of it. And I always thought that, down the road, my two sons, when they got old enough, that we would hike the entire thing. Unfortunately, they got lives too, and wives and careers got in the way. So anyway, I last year, or a couple of years ago, met a fellow that we were going to decided we were going to hike the whole thing. We were both retired and in reasonably good physical shape. And 2014 was our target date. Unfortunately, the fellow I was starting out with got some bad medical issues that came out to the point where that he decided he couldn't go. So I had a choice of either hiking it sometime later or go ahead and doing it solo. And I decided to strike out on my own, and hence my trail name was Solo Amigo. Everybody that goes out on the trail has a trail name. And I started out by myself, but I ended up, you always meet people along the trail, and you hike with them, and then it's a very fluid society on that. And so that's how I got involved with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. And I was lucky enough to complete the whole trail. And if you're not familiar with the Appalachian Trail, it goes from Georgia to Maine. It's roughly 2,200 miles of footpath, and a very challenging experience. And I recommend it for anybody that's physically able to do it. And so it ended up that I met a fellow from North Carolina, and we hit it off, and we ended up completing the trail together. So,
How about this little community theater? Are you performing in that as well?
I used to do a little acting. I got sort of conned into that from a coworker of mine. They needed an extra for a couple of the films, not films, but their productions. I still work with them, helping set construction, and they have their productions down at St. Paul's Church down on the corner of Bond and Green Street. In fact, they have one coming up first part of November, if anybody's interested.
Getting back to the health department, we had one of our former veterans, Ed Singer, that was recently appointed the director of the Carroll County Health Department. You want to talk about Ed and your work with Ed?
I worked with Ed. Yes, he ended up being the director of the division I was in, the environmental health division. He was a very, very good fellow to work with. Good common sense, and I had a good experience with Ed. Yeah, and I know he'll do a good job as director.
As far as in closing, just what would you recommend to the listening audience out there that have young boys that, as far as an experience that they can enjoy in scouting?
Well, obviously I would recommend it highly. And again, there's a lot of good youth organizations out there. The 4-H club, the Boys and Girls Club, to name a few. But of course, my heart's with the Boy Scouts, and it's been around since 1910. So I think they, know a little bit about dealing with boys and youth. I would certainly highly recommend it, not only from the aspect of physical and mental development, but spiritual, citizenship. Those are all aspects of the program that you don't normally see in other organizations. And I think that's what our youth needs right now, is some guidance, in how to accept responsibility for your actions and helping other people at the same time.
Well, Michael, in closing, we'd just like to thank you for your many, many years of service to the Boy Scouts of America and also the American Legion and all the other activities that you've done to make Carroll County a better place to live.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Good talking to you, Bill.
Good talking to you.